All right. All right. You called. You wanted time?
Yes.
It's your time.
Thank you for giving me I know your time is valuable. I saw the clerk's recommendations. I actually talked to Jason already this morning to understand what recommendations he made. He recommended the 3.5 coal raise. I just wanted to be able to take a couple of minutes and just remind the commission the reason why I asked for the rate increase. Just wanted to remind, and I didn't have time to put a packet together. I gave you a packet together. I came for my budget meeting, but we are the lowest negotiations in the state. We are cheaper than the average of the rate by what, in my opinion, is the same job. So, just bring the vehicle to hire, put it in the process of raising the staff and providers over the next month. So we're in a difficult spot over there, and I would really appreciate your consideration on those raises. So I know that the clerk's recommendations at the end of the road on that, but I just wanted to be able to have just a couple of minutes to throw a reminder out there.
And as we talked about it, we did go up one bracket.
No, we did those.
We went up
two.
one.
We did his request.
On his ones because they're being paid for by the district.
Well,
No, I thought that.
Sorry.
we had a little discussion about that, and Ernie wanted to go with the COLA and one bracket, and that's kind of what we talked about, but I have since kind of switched my position. I think we should do the COLA and the two, so
Well,
I'm with Seth.
my projections, I went based on what
Was on there.
was on here, and so I did the 2.
2 plus a COLA?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Leave.
Okay.
Yeah, those ones, I thought the other ones were the ones we did. I left my book downstairs,
Well,
I apologize.
The treatment counselors were paid for themselves. These up here
Yeah.
were not.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
when we had the conversation about whether to give the COLA or not to give the COLA, or to give 2%.
brackets.
And that would put you into 2 different pay brackets.
Yep.
And that's when I says, well,
That's
if we
right.
go 1 bracket plus a COLA, that's 10%, which to me is a pretty substantial increase. But that's where I thought we was at.
And that is kind of where we left off, but like I said, I have since kind of changed my position, and I'm actually reversing my position on the double dipping with the pay grade
Well-
increase and the COLA, so
Give me 1 second, and I'll look and see what I put in. I think the only one that I did one grade was on the management assistant, and that was because of comparability
Yes,
with
that was,
another position. But I did, hold on, let me think of here. On the sheet that Katie gave you on this one, I did the recommendations that were on here. So.
when you
I-
say you did them,
I put them into the spreadsheet, and then here after we meet with Seth, we'll give you the proposed bottom line
with the changes.
with all the changes we talked about yesterday. But we'll do a review of those changes because maybe I did not follow your instructions anymore. But
well, it was kind of getting,
It sounds like I should have just been quiet, not trying.
It would have been a discussion anyway.
yeah, we
you
were
did the
gonna
right
talk
thing.
about it, but.
I left my book downstairs, and I'm sure when the notes come up on, then I'm like, wait a second, the note
But,
said this.
Tell me I
What
could
you
go
missed
grab it for
yesterday
you.
was Tuesday, we did, we went through all of the budget, and so they did take into consideration your grade changes.
So we just haven't decided whether it was 2 or 1.
All right.
You're getting something though.
I'm getting something.
Very
Yeah.
good,
But
very good. I hope it's 2, but we'll wait and see.
well, that was a conversation, because there was
Right,
quite a
yeah.
conversation about,
We did
do we go grade
Yep.
changes plus COLA, not COLA because of double dipping kind of deals, and if we do that, then it puts people on different schedules. So we had quite an extensive conversation. Maybe that's why it didn't come out clear.
And it was late in the day when we got to this
It
part.
was the last part of the day.
Okay, so I put the shift supervisors at 8, so I did just do 1. I did listen.
What about the attendance?
So shift supervisors are at 8, the lead is a 9, and then the attendants are at 7.
So you did move everybody
Yeah.
one, which is where I thought we left off as well.
So that would still put us 2 grades below the jail if we're up there.
That's correct.
But I
And-
believe the plan.
And I says, don't talk to me about equality, talk to me about what they do, who they are. We're gonna start talking about people instead of a shotgun effect of how things go.
Understood.
I like performance-based pay.
One issue that I'm facing is I have new interviewing and I see very few quality people.
Yep.
And it's based on the wage right now that they're looking at, like, lots of applications that I'm like, this person's not qualified or shouldn't have this job. So
Yep.
please also put that into consideration.
Believe me, we are.
Okay.
We wanna do what's best for our employees, plus what's best for the county as a whole, so it's something that we're looking at very seriously.
Okay, very good, thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you. Any other calls that specific?
The other one, Ashley sent me an email asking about what they were gonna get for D6. And I told her, I said, I put in a 3.5 and we are in discussions on what's gonna happen. We're looking at all of your revenue and what's coming in on your billings, and a final decision hasn't been made to this point.
So at this point, I did not have time to look at their revenues. But we also don't have complete revenues. So we need to find out how much of the money that they have received into D6 should go to sheriff. I don't have that information. So the information I do have is incomplete. D6 is considered a grant. So essentially, a decision doesn't have to be made prior to this budget because it's lumped in with the grant total. So what we can do is, once we get that worked out, Alicia sent the information to Teresa over there to try to get the revenue split like they're supposed to be so that I can look at revenues. Once I do that, we can make that decision as long as it's prior to like October 1 to get the approval forms done. So I can bring that back before you.
So I guess.
For further discussions. The only thing it would affect is there's that one treatment counselor in the share program that would need adjusted, that would play in.
Well, I guess this goes back to, do we put it in now and then we have the ability to adjust it depending on what information you have, because we can pull off and not add to.
Well, and the only one we would need to do that with is that individual in the sheriff. Because like I said, these are grants.
Well,
So,
but it comes down to what you said.
Mhm.
Are they fully being funded? Because there's two positions, or one position or two
Right.
positions,
yeah,
that if they're not funding them, then they're not being fully funded,
Right?
in my opinion. I
Yeah.
mean,
that's very valid.
that's what you brought
And
up.
and it is two, right? Isn't it two people?
Two people, but only one's a counselor.
Right.
One's a counselor, one's an admin.
But they
So
still
only
are.
the counselor would get the grade increase.
Okay.
And that's hard, I agree with you, Ernie, but I think that's hard to put it out there and then take it back, because they'll see it possibly.
I could throw it in an allocation line item,
Okay.
and then,
Yeah.
and I would only have to do it for that one
Bad
person.
guys.
But if they would've had the information to you, it would've been easy.
That's true.
That's,
Well,
I
some of
mean, I feel
that,
sorry for them, but
some of that was it was a communication between our offices, transition of an accounts receivable person. They weren't getting the information they needed. We weren't sending it to them, but they also didn't ask for it when they weren't getting it. So,
Oh, and in our most recent hire down there,
yes.
during the lapse between the two.
Yeah. But I'll take responsibility for part of it, but they also should follow up with it. Because they're pretty quick to follow up with most other items that they need. So, but I could put that in if you'd like.
And it just went out on the airways, so they didn't know anything about what we're
Yeah.
doing.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, that's what we kind of talk about. I mean, if they're self-funded,
Yeah, if they're self-funded, go for it. If not, then we have heartburn.
okay. You want me to go back and add, it's not gonna be that much money for one person. If I add it in the 0139, just what that grade change would be. And then I'll just put it down in a separate line item. If, once I get the revenue information, we look at it and it looks like it's gonna be doable, of course, I'll come back before you. We'll make a formal decision, so I know if we're leaving it, taking it out, or telling them not to use it.
I'm good with that, because like anything, it's easier to take it away than it is to try to add it back in later.
Okay.
True.
And then on the grant side, we won't give it on the grant side until we get closer, because like I said, it's lumped, so, okay. Let me make that note really quick so that I don't.
And while we're at a little bit of a pause, I was thinking last night, at one point in time, we talked about a PIO officer position. And it hit me again after Tony went through his thing on the other day, trying to scramble to get information out to all the news outlets that BNB are gonna be closed. And so if we have a minute now, can we talk about that, or would there be a better time to talk about that?
Let's do a quick review of the numbers that we've put in,
Okay.
so that you can see where we're at. And then, that way you can see if you like where we're at, if you don't like where we're at, and then you know if you add what the effects are.
Okay.
But before that,
So I talked with Sheldon from the fair board. That's why I was rushing
With
up
who?
here. Sheldon.
Sheldon.
He has some concerns on his budget.
on the clerk's
and-
recommendation though,
On
right?
the clerk's recommendation and the temporary help. He does not think he's going to be able to complete all of the extra events with the cut in the temporary help. So I did make the suggestion that he needs to schedule an appointment to meet with you guys, and I can follow up with him on that if you would like when we get back downstairs.
The problem we are gonna run into is timeframe,
Mm-hmm.
and, unless we meet on Monday, which we need to let Christie know.
Well, it's on the schedule.
Yeah.
Well, she wasn't
It's
gonna.
conditional.
She wasn't gonna, she was gonna push it through and send invites once
Oh, okay.
she had that.
Yeah. So,
With the fair, I mean, all these extra events, they haven't charged for anything in the past. So where's the income coming from out of these extra events to pay for more help?
You've held other departments to that same
Yeah.
standard, so it's not any different. So, real quick, the paperwork that I just gave you shows a summary of the changes that we had talked about yesterday. So I want to make sure that we're all on board. The sheriff, we added the 250,000 for the jail,
Which one are you looking at?
or the roof.
Christie? Are you looking
Oh,
at
That-
the
that one,
Marie.
sorry.
Thank you.
So we added that for the roof in the general fund budget.
Was that coming out of reserves or taxes?
Well,
I thought we were using reserves out of that one.
I thought that was the discussion. Yep.
Okay.
Then county operations. We'll check and spell them
oh,
out.
What's the,
I'm sorry.
That increase was for, the event center contribution, and that is because we increased for the city works maintenance. So
Yep.
that's kind of a flow through. It's double added, but,
That's
Okay.
that equal out
Yeah.
that we're talking.
yep. And then we've got city works for maintenance and IT. And then we've got, in the sheriff budget, this one we did not discuss, but I need to bring to your attention, and I'll actually skip that one and skip 911, and we'll talk about those together. I over budgeted 248,000 in building repair, just because when I was doing the math, I forgot to take it out. So, We took that out. We figured you'd be okay with that. We didn't discuss that. 70,000 was the reduction for fair maintenance. And then there's the event center, City Works, the grant increase of 8.5 million. So the two for 911 and IT, or the sheriff. When meeting with yesterday with Adam about the 911 budget overage, so that we could come to you with a solution in the work session this afternoon, we discovered that we need to budget about another $100,000 in 911 from transportation. And that is so that we're not in the negative this time next year.
Okay.
There's a possible solution on that. Did you get a chance to talk to Adam?
Yes, so he was in agreement that maybe that 100 should have moved into.
Okay. So, part of this increase, instead of taking the increase to 911, we were going back and forth. We might need to make that increase to 911, but then we thought, because the budget is so tight, we may just have to start asking the participating agencies to contribute a little bit more money, because we are maxed out. When you look at the funding sheet, the new funding sheet that, this one? If you follow down on 911, you'll see that there's on the very right-hand side, dollars needed is $80,000. That's because the budget is higher than what we have coming in. So we discussed having the entities contribute, there's 4 different entities, each would contribute $20,000 more to cover that shortfall. So we didn't have clarification this morning when putting these together for you about if we only needed to increase the budget 20,000 or 100,000 because of that 80,000 contribution. So it sounds like we only need to add that 20,000, and then the other 80 is going to be covered by other entities.
That is what Adam is going to pitch to
The 911 group.
the 911 group today.
So then
Yeah.
theoretically, on this first sheet, it would go from 8.7 down to 8.6.
Yeah, because we're going to take, well, instead of adding 100, we'll add 20, yeah.
Okay.
So,
8.6 something. Okay.
and then we would be within budget. If by chance the 911 group doesn't feel comfortable with that, we have the option of, you guys can say tough, you're gonna have to do it, or you could take that information and say, okay, we'll see what we can do. A solution to cover that $80,000 could be, we could take out John Stewart's wage from 911. He's the only employee budgeted in there for FY22. We could take out his salary and benefits, and it would cover that 80,000 shortfall. So those are 2 options. It just depends on,
So the other entities are Chubby, Hotel,
the sheriff's office,
Sheriff's Office.
which is why I added the 20,000 to the sheriff's budget.
Okay.
And then, Pocatello Fire, which is the fire department and ambulance group. So I'm assuming it would be 10 from each of those, and then 20 from the other 3.
And then their 911 discussions in their group, ISU uses that more than most other organizations, and is not charged anything.
And that was a discussion that Adam was gonna have with ISU, is to see if they could come up with that money, how much they could come up with. So if they've never contributed anything, then maybe we can get them to help us out with either a one-time contribution, or if they get thrown into that mix, it would cost less for the other entity. So, but because that's kind of an unknown, I wanted to present this to you, but those are the 2 options. So, at this point, I've got it covered one of 2 ways, options to cover it. It's just gonna be if you wanna wait and let Adam talk to,
Just listening, and my thoughts are, we want to ask them, it'd be pretty tough to require them, in my opinion, at this point, without having a better discussion. I mean, we could.
I think we should have them come talk to the commissioners, and the whole point is you've been using this and you're not paying for it, like every other entity. If you don't want to help contribute, we're not going to allow you to use the system. They're not a law enforcement agency. They're not technically, I mean, you're not, I mean,
Well,
And I agree with that, except for right here in the middle of this budget. I think the
Yeah.
easiest solution
Well,
is
you
to
cover
move.
it, but yeah.
Well, is to move John's wages.
yeah,
I think that's a,
yeah.
I don't know. It's the simplest to me. I don't know.
And even if we
But
only do
it
it
is
for
the
1 year.
simplest, but once again,
Well,
Bannock County ends up carrying the load.
but then we move forward with our 911. We've formed that committee. We move forward with
Making them-
responsibilities. and-
making them all
Because I think
equal.
there's more than just money that we want to talk to people about in having that meeting.
Well, there is, but like I
John's
said,
about 73,000, give or take a little bit.
Well, when I did just the salary and benefits for him, I think it came up to 90, pretty close to 90, because you'd have to do the benefits too.
Oh, yeah, because we'd already had Adam taken out of it,
Yeah.
that's right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, right, you're right.
So, but it's not a bad thing to move a little bit more. $10,000 really in the scheme of the whole thing might actually allow that fund to, even if we did it for 1 year, they would
Allow it to
actually
do.
build reserves if both scenarios happen. So say they do contribute the 80,000 and we move John, we're gonna be 80,000 ahead for 1 year to try to start replenishing some reserves, because within this budget, we've got the console upgrade, which we're gonna have lease payments, and costs aren't going down, contracts are going up like a percentage every year.
On that console upgrade, should that be something we would consider for ARPA funds? Because that's public safety, which is right in the ARPA funds.
It is.
Well, that would just solve everything. So let's double budget for it, not double budget, let's budget for it, and if we can do the console upgrade, then there's our savings. We can always do a reallocation of that lease payment, throw it up top and pay John from 111. And then not allow him to use the money to generate. We could either do a budget reduction to take it away, or just spend it.
I like that. That's perfect.
Let's move
Why
that
didn't you
direction.
think of ARPA sooner?
You know, had a little caffeine this morning. Brains turned on.
I need some.
Yay.
Brains turned on today.
Yes, so we'll move,
We're gonna double budget
let
that.
me get my, no. We're just gonna budget John in IT, okay? We're gonna double budget the console.
Gotcha.
Well, we're not gonna double budget the console,
Gonna shorten
but,
to-
We're gonna budget the console in 911, but
Right.
then hope to pay it out of the grant. Okay, followed.
right. Okay. Okay, so we will move John to IT, and then, and also let Adam see what he's gonna do on that 80,000. Okay, so then the grade changes that you approved yesterday, and I will run through those again with you to clarify that I didn't do one or two of them incorrectly. Did you put that on the back? No. So we moved the lead administrative assistant in the clerk's office, 1 grade. We moved the payroll tech, 2 grades, the management assistant, 2 grades, the senior admin assistant in the commission office, 2 grades. And I think I did it that way just simply because that was before we started talking about the COLA and everything else in the 1 step, so, or grade. The custodians, I moved for the recommendation of 1 grade. And then juvenile detention, we moved the positions as we discussed just a minute ago, 1 grade. We moved the public works director to a grade 18. And that's what I have. The cost of the grade changes and benefits was $124,000. With the juvenile detention increases, I had already rounded up, which I tend to do on the commission contribution for the detention center, just because I don't know what the usage is gonna be. So I took their budget times 6, or all the county contributions times 67%, and then I rounded up to the nearest 100,000. So I didn't have to adjust your contribution because that was already built in. If we have extremely high usage, I think there's still enough built in there to cover that. But I would need to run a scenario to double check that, just based on what we've used year to date. I didn't do that yet, but I could. And then if that changed a little bit, then I'd come back to you and we can increase that. But I think there's about $15,000.
Okay. Does that include, or does that allow to move them up to 2 pay grades as he requested?
No, I only did the one. So if you want to do the 2, then I could run back downstairs and adjust that spreadsheet. So that would be your call.
I would like to see that because I agree with Seth that I don't feel like they should be equal to the jail. But I believe the responsibilities and stuff are similar enough that 2 pay grade is worthwhile. But we'll argue if we got to.
So you guys know.
I
need at least 2 of you to say do it.
Yeah.
I made my pitch, I'm sitting back.
Otherwise you're out.
Well, and the whole thing that comes back to the juvenile detention area is we've been training every other county's people. That's what's happening, is we train them and then they go everywhere else because we are not even close. And so we either get people that have no experience or, you know, the very limited pool.
And what is our cost to train and
And that's what's getting ridiculous. And so, like I said, where that's a district function, we do pay a good portion of it, but there is some offsetting in there. That is something that we probably need to get those ones, the 2. That's kind of, and again, like I said, some of those things, we got to quit doing this where I can't count. I was thinking about that last night after we talked about this. How many salary rate approval forms I've signed for juvenile detention. I think that's been like, if I go back and like, put it, yeah, it is. And that's what I'm saying, is we're just we're training everyone else's employees.
So I can go back in. I believe we've got.
Couldn't we count that for our donation for like workforce training for like Bannock development or somebody? Or workforce training.
So it sounds like you want me to adjust.
I'd look at it at the 2, and then it's easier to pull it down than yeah.
Okay. I'm comfortable that it might change your contribution a touch.
Oh.
But if you go to this page again, all of the, well, actually, if you look at this is what the bottom line looks like.
Yep.
Again, with the changes that we just talked about. And then look at the funding contributions. We are still $58,000 with what was in here. $58,000 available in property taxes to meet the highest of 3 years plus 3%, just for the county. So we have money that we can make that change for juvenile detention, which will maybe add at the most 50 to your budget.
Still talking about that, and I've had a conversation with members of the city council in Pocatello. They're not taking any 3% at all, and some other things. We're going to lose the governor's thing, and so what I'd like to do with like the benefits, you know, we had 124,000 plus that additional grade, is I would like to maybe use a little bit more reserves on some of those things. I know that we want to be careful of what we're doing for our 3%, but I would prefer that some of those things that let's try and offset it, because there's going to be a shock here going from the county had 15.5% reduction last year. Even though we've done a fairly good job this year in reducing levy, it's still, most people aren't going to understand that. And if we have the opportunity to do it, we're not going to take all the reserves and burn all the reserves, but that was half of the big knock that the legislature came after all the counties, was our reserve balance. They don't get it, they don't understand it, but still, if we can burn off some of that, if we could have another.
So what do you want to leave on the table? What do you want me to use in taxes?
Where are we at on our percentage take? Are we at?
Already, so ambulance, you don't have an option.
No, yeah.
To fund what we've got, I've
Yes.
got to use everything. Abatement, which we actually should probably talk about that next. I used where's my revenue sheet? Abatement, I used the highest of 3 years, 3%, and a portion of new construction.
Okay.
But we haven't finished abatement yet. so.
Did we get our new construction in yet, or is, oh, no, it's not,
It's
they're
sitting
till
in my
Monday.
email.
Okay.
But I did get values, but I didn't get them until this, Anita sent them to me at 2:00 yesterday, but I didn't look at them until this morning.
That's fine.
We can talk about that in a second. So highest of 3 years is 25 million, just under 25.1 million. 3% is 752, just under 753,000. That was the dollar amount that was the focus to take countywide.
Okay.
If you look at the back of this sheet,
Mm-hmm.
that's what the levy is looking like right now.
Yes.
But that's with current year values. Last year's values, just for the county, no operating
Yeah.
property, was 5,040,000, 40 million.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's a,
50/40. Right now, I'm at 55.93.
what are you at?
So 55.93. So once I plug that into this.
5.5.
Yes,
Okay.
almost 5.6.
Okay.
So it took a pretty decent increase.
Mm-hmm.
So that is gonna drop our levy down. I just need to throw it into my
Yeah.
spreadsheet really quick.
And like I said, I'm not talking about trying to clear the whole 753,000 off on reserves. What I'm talking about is if there's some strategic areas that we can turn up the contribution on some reserves by 50,000 here, 20,000 here, and try and come out in that,
Just
you know,
get a little more,
just,
okay.
you know what I mean?
can do that.
I don't, we're not gonna do it to where we shock the system in the 3% of the highest 3 years, but just trying to limit that
Sticker shock.
sticker shock, because
Yep.
it's gonna be sticker shock,
Yep.
let's be honest with it.
That becomes a 19% swing.
Yeah,
Right.
So
yeah.
here's what we can do. You can either have me do that, or we can run through this really quick.
one.
And you guys can give me a recommendation of what you want to see.
I'm gonna have to run down and grab my book. I had it. I'm sorry, I'll be right back. I had all this written down last night as I was thinking about it, and it's easier for me to.
Because what I think we can do is we can just run through what our reserves are, run through this funding sheet, and then we'll use the budget and see how much is capital. The negative of, you can't just look at what capital is, because there's some other one-time monies that are built into operating budgets, that, or even a budget with retirements. So that's why it's not an exact, all of our capital is this much, that's why we use this much in reserves. But we can kind of just do a balance of, okay, so this is capital, and this is a portion of what we want to use. Kind of like when I went through this with you on Tuesday and said how much the general fund had in excess reserves, and this is what we use. We could just see where we're comfortable with it. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's just run through it real quick when Terrell gets back up here.
That way you guys are the decision makers.
Sweet.
Feel the pain
And then we'll just talk it through and
And then if you go ahead and put the recess for a minute.